This, your all-time favorite NFL football team is finally in the Super Bowl. After years of rough seasons and struggles, your team has finally made it. Not only are they in the big game, but they're against your rival. It's the game you've been dreaming of. After four long quarters, third down conversions, scoring back and forth, and amazing defensive plays, time's run out. And it's a tie. Overtime. The teams line up to the center of the field for the coin toss. The visitors, your rival team, get to call it, and they win. They get first possession of the football. And what do they do with it? They score. And just like that, it's over. They win. All of that work and all of the quarters before, all of those crazy one-hand catches and last-minute stops are all for nothing. All of it lost with one flick of a coin. True that not everyone is an NFL football fan, most people tune in to watch the Super Bowl, whether it's to watch the commercials or just for the social event. But by the end, they're sucked in, and even they can't help but watch to see who wins. I've been a football fan for as long as I can remember. My dad changed my diaper on the Dallas Star in the middle of the Cowboy Stadium in Texas. So you could say that this is something I know a little bit about. Today I'll be talking about why the NFL needs to change their overtime rules. First, we're going to look at what the current rules are for regular season games and the postseason, which are playoff games and the Super Bowl. Second, why the current rules just aren't working. And third, why it wouldn't be that hard for the NFL to change and adopt something new. To begin, let's look at what exactly the current NFL overtime rules are. At the end of the four regular scheduled, every NFL game has one, quarters. If the score is tied, the NFL moves to overtime, where both teams come back to the middle of the field with the referee who flips a coin and has the away team call the coin toss. The winner of the coin toss gets to decide if they would like to take first possession of the ball or give that to the other team. And according to the NFL rule book, in this overtime, each team is supposed to, in theory, have the opportunity to possess the ball, which sounds like a good idea. But here's the catch. Each team gets the opportunity to possess the ball unless the first team who possesses the ball scores a touchdown. If that happens, the game just ends, and the whole world and both teams are left wondering, would the other team have scored a touchdown as well? Another rule for regular season games is that if after one designated add-on overtime time is still tied, then the game just ends in a tie. And that is just how, after all the hard work, it's just done. But there are a couple of variations to the overtime rule for postseason games, which are like the championships to decide who goes with the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl. And those extra rules are that it can end in a tie, so you can add as many different amounts of overtime that you need until there's a winner. Each team gets 3 timeouts instead of just 2, and you can only score offensively. There is no safeties. You just have to score with your possessions and your drives. Now that we know and have a better understanding of what exactly the NFL rules are on overtime and how that works, let's take a closer look at why those rules are not the best for the game and are not really bringing any more fans. The main issue with the current overtime rule is one point that is the same with overtime in regular season and preseason and postseason games. And that is the fact that if the team with the first overtime possession goes down and scores a touchdown, the other team never gets a chance to answer back or show what they can do. There are a couple of reasons that just does not work. It just is anticlimactic. You're watching a game, you're so into it, it's going into overtime, you can't wait to see if the other team's going to answer back like they have been the whole other 4 quarters, but the game's just over. And you're just kind of left, as much as you love football or as much as you love that your team won even, you're just left with this feeling of, that's really like how we're going to end this? You'll never know if the other team could do it. I remember watching a game, I love Peyton Manning, where they were in a tie, and They lost the coin toss, and it was just so weird, like sitting and watching and knowing that, their defense should be able to step up, but knowing that no matter how well the defense played, the other team's offense was just on it, and it was more of like an offensive battle, that Peyton Manning wasn't gonna get the chance to show that he and his offense could do just as well as the other team's offense, because once they scored, it was just done. Which isn't exactly fair either. Like, maybe your defense isn't as good as their defense is, but your offenses are compatible, or even your offense is better, but you'll never get to show that because the way that the overtime rules are set up. The other thing is, you just don't really want to say that the game was decided by chance. There's still skill, your defense is still a factor, your offense could still be a factor, but the biggest factor in the way that overtime is set up now is who wins that coin toss, which there is not really like a skill to calling a coin toss. That's just how it is. You're just done. And there are some people that argue that the way the current overtime rules are is fair, because if your team really is better, then your defense should step up and stop them. And yeah, that is a valid point, but Sports Nation analyst brings up an even better point. Why should one team have the chance to play offense and to play defense, but the other team doesn't? Why don't they both have to prove themselves on both playing fields? And even though a tie isn't a possibility in the postseason game, it shouldn't be allowed in regular season games either. That's the other problem with the current layout of the overtime rules. And the regular season games determine who goes to the playoffs. They determine who's even able to move on. And a tie can make or break which team gets to move on and which team doesn't. And the way that a tie just is in the way now is just unnecessary, and it's time for it to go. Now that we know what the rules are and why those rules are more of a problem than a help to the NFL, let's look at what the answer is. What is the solution? How do we fix this? And at first glance, it may seem like the reason that there has been no change, and this is the way the NFL is because it's impossible. Coming up with an answer is just too hard. But that is not the case. The answer is right under everyone's noses. All we have to do is look to college football or the NCAA football and see what they've done and how it's working for them. A recent study done by TV Guide and the NFL and the college shows that NFL football, while still popular, is not as popular as college football because college football is more intense, more competitive. The teams are both going for it rather than being conservative and trying to play the long game, and part of that is because of their overtime. It doesn't come down to chance. It doesn't come down to field goals, because in their overtime, each team is allowed a possession regardless of if the other team scored the first time or not, to show, that they have the same chance, the same skill as the other team. In the NCAA, both teams start on the opposing team's 25-yard line, and they get 4 downs to score. If they don't score, regardless, it goes to the other team, who does the same thing. And after both of those drives, whoever has the most points wins. If it's still tied, you go again. If it's not tied, then you win. But both teams got the chance to show what they can do and to show that they could score. The National Football League overtime rules are no longer working for the majority of the fans and even the athletes. The current rules that whichever team wins the coin toss gets the ball and the chance to score first. And if they go down and score on that first drive, that's it, game over, giving the other team no chance to show that they could score. The current rules also have that regular season games can end in a tie, which ruins the playoff chance for a lot of players and crushes a lot of fans. It makes the games less exciting and less real, and the result is that skill is not as necessary as being able to call a coin toss. To change this and bring the game back to the exciting time when Americans couldn't turn away from the NFL, we should adopt the college overtime rules and give both teams a chance to score before calling a winner. Back to that game you were watching at the beginning. Imagine this. The other team, your rival, has just scored. And instead of the game being over, your team, your quarterback, your offense, gets 4 drives to go down and show that they can do the same thing. And they do. And they get to kick that extra field goal, and they win.